a thinking move, you see.
It's a
I'd have to be
diabolical thinking
careful.
mode.
It's diabolical. The devil made me do it. Um, and so I have to. Oh, yes, I do have a story for you. I just thought, oh, I'll listen to a couple stories and then, I'll ease in with my own little bit of devilry. But here I am, but caught between the devil and a hard place. So here's the story. This story started a long time ago in the Ottawa Valley. Back in the old days, just after the Algonquin people had been, in many cases, forcibly removed, and land was wanted by people from various parts, and so the Ottawa Valley was settled by the Germans and by the Irish and by the Scots. And once they had a series of uh, prosperous and at that time 100-acre farms and growing everything from potatoes to taking care of bees, you name it. There's all sorts of things going on, but and also grain. Now, as I said, they're 100-acre farms, and 100 acres is a good piece of land for somebody who's never had land before. But it's such a small piece of land to grow grain. You need lots and lots and lots and lots of it. And that's why the prairies eventually became became the place for people to become, as they say, Canada's breadbasket. Well, but the farmers wanted to grow grain just the same, so they grew it: wheat and rye, and the ones that I can remember. In the But once they grew it, once they harvested it, how do you thresh it? And so that was a bit of a problem. Now you could get threshing, but in the old days that was good enough when you had lots of farm hands and lots of people were willing to do it by hand, and the threshing floor and all sorts of stories come up about threshing floor, and I suppose the devil indeed. And in a way, this is one of those stories. Now, so since and nobody could really afford the machines, big hulking things, and that could be run off of a flywheel, and the flywheel could be attached to a traction engine, for instance. But although nobody could really afford the thresher by themselves or the large, huge steam powered traction engines, why one person could go from farm to farm to farm with the thresher and the traction engine and thresh the wheat for them. And that's what Murray McNabb did. He was one of your Scotsmen. But he'd come late. He'd come after everybody else had shown up. And he'd shown up with a huge 5 ton piece of modern beauty, the Diamond Queen traction engine. And that flywheel could turn, um, oh, the saws for for lumber camps. It could pull the threshing machine, and so he went from farm to farm at harvest time, where he would take the harvest and thresh it into beautiful golden grains of rye and wheat. And when he had left, he'd go on to the next farm. Now you think somebody who got around like Murray McNabb did would have lots of friends. Nope, not a bit. Nobody loved Murray, and Murray loved nobody. And I think part of the reason why was after the harvest was over, Murray would the harvesting of the grain. Murray started harvesting the harvest workers because there was always be poker games and other games of chance. And Murray would go and clean out the hard earned money that those farm workers had put aside all summer long. And he'd go into the barn. He says, anybody interested in a game of poker or two? And people who didn't know him would join him. And the ones who did know him would join him because they'd hoped to win the money they'd lost the year before. So he cleaned up. Now, I said nobody loved Murray, and Murray loved nobody, but there's one thing that Murray loved, and that was the Diamond Queen. As he said, 5 tons of mechanical beauty, the huge flywheel whistling around, and at the beginning of the harvest, the machine would be gleaming, and although it got dirty and dusty, every day Murray would clean down, wipe down the Diamond Queen, whisper sweet words to it, and at the end of the harvest, well, that machine was as clean, as gleaming as the day it was made. And he was in his way happy. Now it was late harvest, and most of the farms had had their grain threshed, and so in fact this was the last farm that Murray would be working before the winter set in. And they were in the barn as usual with the Diamond Queen off to one side. And in fact, it's late in the season and it was cold, and so Murray had set fire in the boiler, and just to keep the farm and the barn warm. And they were playing, and it seems that Murray had, as usual, the devil's own luck at poker. And bit by bit, the hard-earned money of the farm workers disappeared into Murray's pockets, until at last they all said, "That's enough, you have the devil's own luck, we'll not play with you anymore." "Ah," said Murray, "none of you will play with me? I would. I'll play with the devil himself." Well, you know what that means. And then at the door, suddenly the wind, which had been still, began to blow, and the barn began to shake a little bit, and the barn door began to sway and squeak and creak, and then the barn door slid open, and there stood a fine dressed gentleman, the sort of chap who never shows up on a poor, hard-working farmer's land unless he was there to collect the rent. And so he says, "Did I hear somebody mention they'd play with the devil? Well, it just so happens I'd rather like a game of chance myself. And so here I am." Now all of the farm workers, they were terrified, and some took another swig of the drink that they'd brought with them and turned away. But Murray McNabb, he wasn't afraid. He looked the devil in the eye and he says, "Are you here to talk or to play?" "I'm here to play," said the devil, or it was him. And he walked over, took off his gloves, put them aside, sat down. He says, "We'll play with my deck. I'll play with any deck that can be played with." And so the devil reached into his pockets, and he pulled out a deck, but it was a special deck. For each card was a damned soul out of hell. And so it was the devil's own deck. And he laid down the cards one by one by one. And the first couple rounds, Murray won. For as I said, he had the devil's own luck. But he was playing against the devil himself. And he soon began to lose. One game, and then another, and soon Murray's stack of money shrank down, down, and down, until in the last game, the devil had everything that Murray had won that day. Then Murray said, the devil said, "Why, at least it seems I've got everything you've got, Murray. Everything for you to bet." "Oh, everything except for one thing, and you know what that is." And Murray looked the devil in the eye and he said, "I know what that is, and I'll put it down on the table." And they played, and Murray lost. The devil put on his gloves and he said, "Okay, Murray, I thought it would have to wait a long time to get you, but here you are, and it's time for us to go." "Not so fast," said Murray, for Murray was a Scotsman and he knew the ways of the devil and he knew the rules. "You may have my soul now," said Murray, "but as long as I've got breath in my body, I am allowed a second chance. You know that. That's the rules." "You're right," said the devil. "I should never have agreed to that." "Okay, very well. I'll give you a contest. A simple contest. It's a tug of war. All you have to do is win this tug of war, and your soul's yours, and I'll never touch you again, Murray." He said, "And what tug of war?" Because Murray looked around and says, There's no rope. There's nobody out." "It's my rope," said the devil, and he snapped his fingers, and a hole opened up on the floor, and out of the hole in the floor there came sulfur and smoke and a glow that reached all the way to down to hell. And Murray and the devil took his cards. He says, "See these cards? These are the souls of the damned." And he threw those cards into the hole, and then he snapped his fingers, and out of the hole there shot a gleaming white hot chain, and the devil caught that chain. He said, and there it glowed in the dim light of the barn. He said, "It's very simple. All you have to do is win a tug of war and hold the end of this white hot chain for just 1 minute, Murray. And if you can hold it for 1 minute, then your soul is yours. But at the other end of this chain are all the souls of hell, and they'll be pulling you down to where you belong." Murray began to sweat because he looked at that white hot chain. And then he said, "Well, perhaps somebody else could help me." But Murray looked around, and he and the devil were alone in the barn. "Just you and me," said the devil, "and all the souls of hell. Here's your chance, Murray, to win your soul back. Because there's nobody else here who can help you." As soon as the devil said that, there came a whump, whump, whump sound. And there was the Diamond Queen, and that flywheel was slowly beginning to turn. The steam engine was going chuffing and huffing, whump, whump, whump. Now the devil, who knew the language and voices of all the things that had fire as its heart and its soul, understood what that sound meant coming from the Diamond Queen. And he said, "It seems you've got one friend after all, Murray. One friend of all." And so the devil took the chain and he threw it through the air, and it wrapped itself around. That white hot chain wrapped itself around that flywheel, slowly turning around. Whump, whump, whump. And then the chain tightened, and then began a tug of war, or if you might say, a tug of love. The chain tightened and tightened, and then it became so tight there was a singing sound, and the sound of the chain singing, and at the other end the souls of hell howling, and the Diamond Queen stood fast. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 50 seconds, 60 seconds. The minute had passed. "And there you are," said Murray. "The time has passed and the soul is mine. Let go of the Diamond Queen." May as well, I said the devil. And the white hot chain slid down into the hole. The hole closed, and there was silence. Well, you have your soul, said the devil. Perhaps I'll get it eventually, because I'm waiting. And the devil walked out the door, and the door shut. That's the kind of exit only the devil can make. And there stood Murray McNabb, alone with the Diamond Queen. And then he looked at the Diamond Queen, and it was no longer beautiful and shining, for the heat of the chain from hell had heated it up so much the paint had bubbled and burnt and turned dark, and the metal had slightly melted and would never run again. The Diamond Queen was gone. Well, I'd like to say that from that day on, Murray McNabb was a changed man, and a better man. Perhaps he was. He was a changed man, a more thoughtful man. But what he do? He took the Diamond Queen and he had her taken into the forest somewhere. And somewhere in the Ottawa Valley, you'll see a grove. And the trees in this grove of trees, if you go through it, you'll come to a tangle of brambles and vines and bushes. And in the very center of that, there is an old traction engine. Now, some people say it was just abandoned there, but I know the truth. It's a legacy of a love that a man had for a machine, and the machine had a love for the man. That's the story as I just told it to you. The story of Murray McNabb, the devil, and the Diamond Queen. Is that devil enough?
Thank you very, very much, Norman. That was a diabolical story. And now I will stop the recording. Wow.